Meanwhile, an escape route from the deadly conflict in Gaza has been slammed shut. The Rafah crossing in Egypt was due to be open for 6 hours today to allow foreigners to leave the Palestinian territory. Now, that includes 150 people with ties to Canada. But that opening never opened. We'll bring you more on that in just a moment. Also this hour, the deadline has passed for hundreds of thousands of people fleeing northern Gaza to try and move to the south, to use 2 roads that Israel specified as safe evacuation corridors. For some already trying to flee, the journey has proved deadly. Video verified by BBC and CNN shows the aftermath of an Israeli strike on a Palestinian convoy of vehicles. At least 12 people, including children, have been killed. This video, obtained by Reuters, shows wounded people, including a young girl and a paramedic, being rushed into hospital. For its part, Israel insists its actions are against Hamas militants and not against civilians.
We've seen active efforts by Hamas to block these people from leaving, which I think is appalling at a whole new level. And once we'll see that the situation will be permissible for significant combat operations, then they will commence.
Ahead of an expected ground invasion, Israel's bombardment of Gaza continues. Its Air Force now claiming a drone strike killed the Hamas commander who led the cross-border attack on Israeli settlements a week ago today. Paul Hunter is part of the CBC News team that's on the ground in Israel. He's at the Damascus Gate in Jerusalem. Paul, it seems hopes were raised, then dashed for dozens of Canadians who are trying to get out of Gaza. What's the latest on that Rafah border crossing into Egypt?
Yeah, and we've heard from the family of some of the Canadians stuck in Gaza on this, and we're told that they were told, the Canadians in Gaza this morning, to get to the Rafah gate, that it would be open for a period of time, 5 hours, noon until 5 here, and they could have passage. And so the idea was to get there, but what is already there are thousands of people, because that is the only way out for anybody in Gaza right now. All the other borders, which are with Israel, are closed. So there's this mass of people at the Rafah gate to begin with. So the first thing was not enough time to get down there. But then came word just before noon, before it was even supposed to open, that it would not open, that the international agreement that was theoretically in place to allow that to happen had fallen apart. And remember, this also involves a number of other countries with nationals inside the Gaza Strip. There's some 500 Americans among them, but the 150 Canadians. So it never opened. And there is some frustration and anger, certainly one can presume, by the Canadians in Gaza, but certainly we're hearing it from their family who have contacted CBC. They did what they were told, nothing happened. There has been the suggestion that on the Egypt side of the Rafah crossing there is aid waiting to get in, as it were, but there's that blockade. And the suggestion goes that the deal would be Egypt would open the gate for those 5 hours if some of the aid was allowed in. Don't know what happened. Bottom line, whatever agreement was in place has fallen apart. The U.S. State Department is meanwhile saying to its people, the 500 Americans in Gaza, hang tight. Don't stray far from the Rafah crossing because it might open again. So, we, for the moment, yeah, slammed shut, but maybe not permanently. They're still talking, would be the inference we can draw from that. So the degree anybody can hear this, stay close to that crossing just in case, because the presumption is if it opens, it won't stay open for long.
Okay, so we're watching that tiny little border crossing that could alleviate some of the stress for thousands of people, including 150 Canadians. But in the meantime, we've got close to 1 million people in the northern part of Gaza who may or may not be scrambling to get to the south as per the IDF warning, essentially. What's the latest on that?
Complete and utter chaos, right? We're talking hundreds of thousands of people. Remember, many had been displaced before because of the airstrikes that have been going on all week. So let's, to be generous about it, let's say hundreds of thousands of people are trying to get themselves down from the north to the south in Gaza Strip, a journey that is complicated in the best of times, let alone when the streets are covered in rubble from the buildings that have been hit by airstrikes. Today, we're seeing reports of people who are making that journey, not taking direct hits by any means, but being caught in the hits, buildings collapsing, people were injured, taking that journey down from Gaza, from the north, including Gaza City, to the south. You're right to say there were 2 passages deemed safe zones today by the Israeli military. The closing time for that has been a complicated thing. It was supposed to be this afternoon, then there was word that it was extended a little bit. It's hard to figure out exactly when that will end and what it means when it will end. How long after that point would a ground assault begin? These are all things that are talked about and guessed about and seem to be moving, but it's very confusing for everybody. But the bottom line is these hundreds of thousands of people are going down there with mattresses on their shoulders, they're on, donkey carts, bicycles, trying to get somewhere where they don't fit. There are shelters down there that are jammed, schools that have been converted to shelters that are jammed. People are sleeping in chairs on the lawns, on the ground, carrying the little bits of food that they have left because, of course, there's still that blockade in place as well. No food, no water, no fuel, no power, no medicine. And there are the countless left behind, right? The elderly, the disabled, people who just can't make the trip, the defiant. And let's remember, Hamas is telling people to stay, right? Hamas is saying, don't go, right? One of the fears held by many is that if you leave, you'll never go back, that this is the end of your time, that Israel will take command and control of the north, maybe beyond, that as people are being told to leave, that's the end forever. So hence some resistance to leave, even though they've seen the airstrikes and they know what this means if they don't leave, that the intensity that they've seen for the past few days is going to step up and they risk death by staying.
One thing Hamas keeps talking about as well is the 100 or so hostages that were taken last weekend and that are presumably being held in Gaza. Any update on those people?
No. You think about it in real time sometimes. They are somewhere right now in a room, right, wondering their fate. They're publicly, nothing is known, right, dead or alive. Location spread about, the degree to which talks are still going on, potentially for a prisoner exchange, Palestinian prisoners on this side for some of the hostages on that side. We know that the Israeli military had some infantry go in, supported by tanks in the last couple of days, looking for traces of them, evidence, something that could lead them there. The word from the IDF is that some evidence was found. It's unclear anything else. So that remains this awful, sad, horrifying mystery. Indeed, they're still out there somewhere. Again, as we've said so often, a consideration as Israel now seems at the precipice of moving in with its ground assault. What will be the fate of the hostages if and when that happens, which, say it again, more than ever right now, feels imminent.
CBC's Paul Hunter at the Damascus Gate in Jerusalem. Thank you again, Paul.